All right, time to get retirement ready in this segment brought to you by Fidelity Investments. As the year closes out, it's a good time to take stock of where your finances stand and start preparing for your financial future. Joining us now to give us some year-end tips for retirement is Bill Smith. He's the managing director for CBIZ MHM's National Tax Office. So, Bill, we've got the end of the year coming up. Is there anything that people can do now on a tax basis to maximize their retirement savings for 2019 as they look ahead to next year?
First, I want to say it was a little hurtful to hear you all call each other old, and then I have to come on in the next segment. But
what is your view on shares of Snapchat, Bill? We'll go with that.
I don't even know what it is. Come on. So when we're talking about what to do at year end, there are a lot of different things to consider, some of which are whether you're still working and whether you've reached age 70 and a half. So if you're still working, you still have the ability to make contributions to your qualified plans like your IRAs or your 401ks, and you want to make sure you maximize those. On the other hand, if you've reached age 70 and a half, you're going to hit the point where you have what are called required minimum distributions from your retirement plans, and it's very important that you make those required minimum distributions because not only are the distributions taxable, but if you under-distribute, there's a penalty of 50% on the amount that you don't distribute. So those are two of the things with your qualified plans you want to make sure you're watching.
Now, let's talk a little bit about deferring income to next year versus accelerating it to 2019. I mean, I think a lot of people are often surprised, with bonuses and whatnot by one, what their year-end totals might be like, and two, they might be unaware of how they could have changed that from year to year. So kind of what's your advice there, and what should people be looking for as they get ready to square up 2019 and start thinking about filing in the spring?
Well, you should always be taking stock of what you have the ability to defer to next year because it always makes sense to pay tax a year later. Now, with interest rates as low as they are, the deferral isn't as beneficial as it once was, but it's still always a good idea. Generally, the general rule we like to say is you want to accelerate deductions and you want to defer income. So if you have the ability to do things like waiting to get your bonus paid until next year. A lot of companies pay them on or before March 15th because the companies can deduct them in the prior year and the employees don't have to report them till the following year. So that's a good plan that's used by a lot of companies. But if you have the ability to defer that bonus, it's generally going to be a good thing.
What's your advice to those retiring next year in what is going to be probably a pretty contentious election season?
Well, in terms of what to expect in tax legislation and the scenario that we're looking at, I think there really won't be any new tax legislation in 2020. So you can pretty much count on what we have now as the same tax laws that we'll have next year. Even laws with bipartisan support are not getting passed because of the contentiousness between the House and the Senate right now. So you can pretty much rely on the fact that we'll have the same tax laws next year because even with the elections, whoever gets elected is not going to take office until 2021. And then you're going to have a situation where unless the Republicans take the House, you won't get legislation through Congress on the Republican side, and if the Democrats don't take the Senate, you won't get legislation through the Congress on the Democratic side. So it might be irrelevant who wins the presidential election in terms of tax legislation if one or the other of the chambers doesn't flip.
And Bill, just quickly, I think in many ways we're still figuring out everything that's in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Have there been any surprises that you've seen over the last year of something that was in there that people weren't exactly looking for or ready for?
Well, it was difficult to tell for individuals what the impact was going to be, how the increased standard deduction and the cutting back on itemized deductions would affect everybody. I think the overall perception is that it was generally a tax cut, but a lot of people, particularly in high tax states that are subject to the SALT cap, have experienced a tax increase and have complained about it, even the wealthier. So it's been a little bit hard to truly get a handle on how, on the individual side, all those Tax Cuts and Jobs Act have changed things. And you also have, of course, the changes in the tax rates that were worked in there that were kind of a help to individuals there. So having gone through a filing season under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I think you can sort of peg what's going to happen next year, peg how to expect your 2019 taxes to look.
All right, Bill Smith, appreciate the time. Have a great holiday. We'll talk to you next year.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.